Roger, what are some of the key takeaways from Mr. Morrison's presser?
Well, I suppose the main point is the formation of this National COVID-19 Commission, which will be granted the powers to try to keep the economy on track and to solve problems. As the Prime Minister said, it will try to bring the private sector and the public sector together. For instance, trying to get food supplies from warehouses and producers to the supermarkets and to the shops. Any problems, any major issues that arise during the course of this crisis, the new commission will be there to address, and will have the power to get onto the Prime Minister and say, look, we need to do this now, we need to do this in a hurry, let's get it done. And the Prime Minister made the point that we're now in Australia, and indeed the rest of the world, facing twin crises here. One is the health crisis, and at the same time there's the economic crisis. And the Prime Minister, I think it's fair to say, is very anxious to keep the economy up and going as much as possible in these difficult times, and he's pulling out all the stops now to try to achieve that. So basically, the government is accelerating its response to the COVID-19 crisis, and in so doing, we've heard over the past 12 hours or so that he's going to prevent all Australians from leaving the country by sea or air, unless they have a very good reason for doing so on compassionate grounds, or maybe they're an aid worker going to another country. But generally speaking, all overseas travel will be banned. The government have also tightened restrictions on day-to-day activities. Food and indoor markets will be banned. Food halls, food courts will be closed down, although some businesses within those food halls will still be able to offer a takeaway service. Weddings, only about 5 people will be able to attend a wedding. In the case of funerals, only 10 people will be allowed to attend a funeral. In addition to that, all property auctions are being cancelled. The open for inspections, which real estate agents like to hold every week, they're being cancelled too. And the experts fear that this is going to put a real create a real crisis for the property market. And some real estate experts are saying that we could see the property values in Australia plummeting by 20% or more. So a really difficult situation here. On the flip side, schools are still open in most areas of the country anyway, and likewise hairdressers are still able to operate for some reason or other. And this is indicative, I suppose, of the mixed messages that the government are giving out at the moment. People are a little bit unsure why hairdressers should still be able to operate, but other areas of the economy not able to do so. And that it really creates questions in people's minds about whether the government is really addressing this crisis in a right and proper way and in an effective way, and whether or not we should have a total lockdown sooner rather than later.
And there doesn't seem to be unification on some of the measures, because, Scott Morrison was talking about these measures at a federal level. The states have the power to do what they want, essentially. Clearly, Victoria is not on the same page as Scott Morrison, because they are closing the schools there. Just anecdotally, it's interesting you mentioned that the hairdressers are still open, because someone just 2 days ago said to me that her mother had flown back to Sydney, Kingsford Smith Airport, and they weren't even doing temperature checks at Kingsford Smith Airport. And yet Scott Morrison's talking about how robust the testing has been in Australia. How robust has it been exactly?
Well, there are a lot of stories like that. People coming back from overseas, getting off the plane and virtually walking through the arrivals lounge without any kind of attention whatsoever. I think they've had to give their name and address before disembarking from the plane. But, there's not been a lot of temperature testing, and a lot of people felt that the authorities have been a bit too free and easy here. And that created the perception that more and more people are being allowed to, spread this virus. And a lot of the virus infections have come or have been tracked back to people coming in from overseas. So that is a very big problem. We've also had this terrible situation in the past few days revealed where a big cruise liner, the Ruby Princess, was allowed to dock in Sydney on Thursday last week. That had 2,700 passengers on board, and those passengers were all allowed to leave without any particular, without really having to address any kind of test or create or talk to the authorities. As a result of that, we now know that 133 of those passengers have tested positive to the virus, and they've also contributed to the 200 confirmations we've had in New South Wales overnight of more people going down with this infection. The problem is that these passengers, these 2,700, have now spread out all across Australia. They went back by air to their homes in Perth, in the Northern Territory, in South Australia, in Tasmania. So the danger is that they infected a lot of people on the aircraft and as they travelled home. This is all adding to the suggestion that the government are a little bit all at sea here, that different decisions are being made in different areas and not everybody is coordinating their efforts. The state government, there's a big blame game going on here. The state government are blaming the federal government for what they call a monumental stuff-up. The border police who monitor comings and goings at ports and airports are also being accused of not doing their job properly in the case of the Ruby Princess. So, it's a terrible situation, a crisis, and nobody really is confident that the government has got a handle on it at this stage. Hopefully, as a result of this announcement by the Prime Minister in the past few minutes, the government, by forming this new National COVID-19 Commission, will start to really get down to business and put a stop to the spread of this virus as soon as possible.
Okay, we certainly hope so. Roger, thank you very much for all that update. That was our correspondent, Roger Maynard, in Sydney.